wire. And this would be important if you have some sort of appliance like a lamp and you notice that the cord is frayed and that the wires are broken, but you don't want to have to buy a new lamp right away, so you want to fix it yourself. So if everybody wants to just gather up here. Alright, first we are going to go over the tools really quickly. This is a soldering gun. To operate it, you just pull the trigger and the heat comes out the end. And also there's a little bulb here, so that helps you to be able to see what you're doing. These are wire cutters, a knife or scissors. These are wire strippers, and these have a little gauge right here, so you can figure out which one best fits your wire coating, and then you'll be able to strip the wire coating from the wire. Soldering paste or flux. The solder, this is a 50-50 solder, which means it's 50% tin and 50% lead. You might need electrical tape, and this is heat shrinking tubing, and you can buy it in a package like this, and then you just cut it down to the size that you want. And then we have our electrical cord, and you can see that this electrical cord has some damages to it. You can see that the coating has been rubbed off and that the wires are exposed and broken. Are there any questions on any of the equipment and tools? Okay. The first step, after you notice that your wire is broken, you are going to snip it where the break is. So you use your wire cutters. Then you need to separate the two wires in their coating, so you can just either use the knife or use scissors to make a tiny little cut, and be careful not to cut into the wire anymore, because obviously you don't want to damage it any more than it already is. So just cut through the wire a little, and sometimes if you cut it a little bit, you'll be able to pull it apart, which is just a little bit easier anyway. So you want to separate it usually about an inch or 2 inches, just so that you can work. And then you're going to do that to the other side that you need to fix. Any questions yet? Okay. Now we are going to take our shrink tube, and you want to get the tube that's closest to the size of your wire, so that way you don't have a lot of extra shrink, because if you have a lot of extra, then it may not shrink tight enough. So that one would fit pretty good. See, it's pretty tight, but you can still slide it. Okay. So then you just cut off approximately how much you're going to need. So you need one for each end of your wire, your separated wires. And then you put them on. And you want to put these on before you do anything else, so that way it's already on there, so it's not harder to get it around anything that you do. And then you also, the shrink is just to kind of protect the wire after you solder it back together. Then you hold them together and put a larger piece of shrink on. I think that'll fit okay. If you don't have any shrink that fits well enough, you can also use electrical tape, especially for the outside, because that would be fine. So then you are also going to slide that on over the other two, fogging up. Now, that might be a little bit tight, so we will just use the electrical tape. Alright, so now you take your wire strippers and you see which size is approximately the right size to be able to strip it. And it looks like the 16 gauge is about the best one here. So then to use the wire strippers, you snip it down, you twist your wire, and then you pull, and then the plastic coating comes right off. So we want to do that to both ends. And now we're going to do it to this side also. Do you think that you need to put shrink on this side?
No, because you slide that piece over.
Right.
How much do you take off?
You really don't have to take very much, just enough that you'll be able to get to the wire so that you can twist them together. So like maybe a half an inch or a quarter of an inch even. Okay, sometimes it's a little sticky. Okay, the next thing you are going to do, straighten your wires out a little bit, just so they're all together, so that you get them all twisted. Then you cross your wires at a 90-degree angle, and you twist them together. That is called a Western Union splice. And then you want to make your twist so you don't have a real big bulge, otherwise your shrink's not going to fit over very well. And I think it's easier to do one at a time. So now we'll plug in our soldering gun. The next thing you have to do is you need to put a little bit of flux on your twisted wires. We'll get our solder ready so we're all ready to go. And if you don't have a brush or anything, you can just use a knife or a screwdriver or whatever you need to put your flux on. So you just take a tiny, tiny little bit and you just put it right over the twist in your wires. Okay? And also if the end of your solder is dirty, you can flux that as well. And the flux is just so that it kind of cleans it, so that way your solder will stick to the wires and hold them together. Because obviously, right now this won't work. If you pulled this, the wires would come out pretty easily. Alright, now we are ready to solder. Can someone hold this, please? If you want to just hold it. Thank you. Alright, so you use your soldering gun, and it heats up really quick. So you just pull the trigger and brush it along where the flux and the twist is. And then you just heat your solder. And you just really need a tiny little bit of solder to hold it together because it's such a tiny little twist. Thank you. Alright, so you see that? You also want to make sure that you don't have a big ball of solder that melts onto there, because then again your twist or your shrink won't be able to slide over it. Alright, so then you do the same thing to the other wires. Hold it at 90-degree angle. Twist together. We'll add a tiny bit of flux. Alright, could you hold this again, please? Thank you. Okay, so how am I going to do this now?
Pull the trigger.
Now what?
Heat it up. How do you know if it's hot enough?
It gets hot really quick, and this solder melts really, really easily.
So you just kind of hold it there?
Yeah. And you can even touch the end of your solder with your soldering gun if you have to. Thank you. That one I think I should have twisted a little bit more because you can see that those wires are there. So instead you can snip them off because you don't want any wires poking out. Does anybody know why?
We get electrocuted?
Well, we're going to be covering with shrink. And it would put a hole in the shrink, and so I guess then...
That's the same problem you started with?
Yeah. Alright, so then we just push our shrink up over where we have soldered so that it covers the bare wire. then you have to shrink your shrink. So, you can use a lighter or a heat gun, anything just to heat the shrink up a little bit. And if you do use a lighter, or you can also use a torch, see how that shrinks on there?
Oh, wow.
You want to be careful not to scorch your shrink, or you're going to put a hole in it. Alright, see how that shrank up there? So, then if you had a bigger shrink tubing than what I have in the pack, then you would be able to slide that back up and shrink that on, which really isn't even necessary because this would be fine, it's just an added protection. So instead we might want to put some electrical tape over it just to protect it a little bit more because it is kind of a weak area now. And also that will hold the two wires together so that you don't get it caught in something and pull your wire apart. Are there any questions? Do you guys think you can do it? It's really not hard.
I think Krista can do it.
You want to try it?
Sure.
All right.
You're
I'm
gonna walk
gonna-
me through it?
Yep, I'm gonna unplug this. The tip cools down really easily, but we don't want to trip over the cord or anything. Okay. All right, so find a weak spot in your cord.
This one right here.
Okay, and how do you know that it's a weak spot and that's
Because
where you
the
want to fix
wires are exposed.
it? Great. Okay, so what are you gonna do first?
Cut it
Yes.
at the weak spot, so cut it right here.
Yep.
Now I have to take the scissors to separate it,
Yes.
just like cutting right in between them.
Uh-huh.
And a little indent.
Yep.
How far apart should I pull it?
About 1.5 inches to 2 inches.
Like that's good.
Yep.
And I have to do the same as this one.
Good. Okay. Now what? Strip it.
Right.
Not quite yet.
I have to put the
Yes.
this
That
one.
one's going to be a little bit too big, so
Too
try
big.
that one.
And I put it on this end, right?
Either one, it wouldn't matter.
How much?
That should be good. How big is that piece? Yeah, why don't we just cut that in half and then we're going to use it for both.
And then just push it all the way on.
Yep, just so you have room to be able to strip the plastic coating off. Good. And now when you strip it, you want to make sure that you're not going to have more than what your shrink is going to cover.
Okay. And you said it was roughly.
Can you feel it loosening a little bit when you twist it?
No.
There you go.
Should I have more than that?
I would, just so it's a little
Okay.
bit easier to make the twist. I'm sure that after we all become pretty good at this, you won't need to make such a big bare area.
Check moving down lower.
I can't clamp
All
anymore.
right, then loosen up just a tiny bit maybe, so it's still pretty tight, but so that you can twist it a little easier. There, I think you got it. There.
Hmm.
And it's okay if you pull some of the wires out. See, and I'm sure I did the same thing. There's still a couple little wires in there, but you have so many that are left, so that's not going to be a big deal. Good.
I have to do the same over here.
And And sometimes if you hold it real close, yep, to the base of the strippers, then it makes it a little easier.
Did you Mr. Calling your life, Krista?
Yeah, you're doing good.
Okay, go home. I'm quitting school, guys.
Good.
Electrician.
Not
Okay.
good that you're quitting school. Good job stripping up the wire coating.
Now I need to plug this in.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then I need to apply this to this. And no, I need to put them together.
Yep.
A 90-degree angle. No.
You don't want to twist it up like that because then your shrink won't slide, so you kind of twist it around.
What?
Like, you don't twist it at the top, you twist it around.
Bend it.
Yep. Yeah, kind of bend them over each other. Mm-hmm. Yep, just like that.
Okay. They're not.
See if you can twist it a little bit tighter because you have a little bit of a bulb there. Looks good?
Okay. Now I apply my flux.
Yes.
Use the knife. And now I take this. Uh-oh. Do I need somebody? I need to hold it. How do you tell if it's hard enough?
I heard it sizzle like bacon.
I think so too. Okay, and you can even touch the soldering gun to the solder a little bit.
Ah, no.
No! Okay, don't pull. Try to heat the solder back up. Alright, and now pull it away while you're heating it. Yep. Alright.
So how do I fix it?
Well, I think it's going to pull apart, so
Oh, good. This isn't my calling anymore.
you're doing good.
You have to become a plumber.
And actually, it's holding.
Oh, good.
So,
Just
it
doesn't
might
look
be
pretty.
okay. Why don't you try to heat that a little bit, because that's kind of sharp there, so you don't want your shrink to get poked through. That looks good. Perfect. Okay.
Now I have to do the other side.
Kind of straighten your wires out first. Like, you can even twist the individual. Yeah, that'll probably help. Remember, you don't have to have them twisted real tight, just so that they can hold together until you get your solder on.
Okay, so like that.
Yeah, that looks good. Perfect. Here, so
Oh, I
look-
hear it this time. Oh, look, there's still solder from the last time. Uh-oh.
That actually looks like, that looks great. Very nice.
Now, I have to put the shrinking things
And just slide all over
Yes.
to the other side. Oh.
Okay, it's over both on that one. And that one. Okay.
Alright.
Now I just take the lighter. So I do both sides.
Mhm.
Is that good?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, and then I use electrical tape.
We don't really even
Okay.
need to do that, but you
Okay.
know that you can.
Okay.
Alright, so what do you think?
Well,
Good job.
it was a bit challenging at times, but it was good.
But now that you've done it once, you think you could probably do it again?
Yeah, I can go home and show my brother
Yeah.
for when he bites to the cord.
Now you'll be able to fix them.
Yep.
Alright, does anybody have any questions?
Can you, before you put your shrink on and do the soldering, can you twist both sides at one time so you can just go in and solder? And at
You
the same
can,
time?
yeah. I just did one at a time because I thought it would be easier, so that way you don't have to worry about pulling the one off.
Okay, I see.
Any other questions?